Today is Sunday, May 3rd, 2026, and today is National Paranormal Day, which feels like one of those ideas that stays interesting, not because it's proven, but because it never fully goes away. Welcome to Wait, That's Random, This Day in History. I'm your host, C.L. Burns, voice actor, audiobook narrator, and your guide through the odd and unexpected corners of history. Let's dive in. On today's date in 1937, Gone with the Wind was awarded the Pulitzer Prize for fiction. At the time, the book had already sold over 1 million copies in its first year, something that didn't happen often. People weren't just reading it, they were talking about it, passing it around, debating it. And what made it stand out wasn't just the story. It was the way it shaped how people imagined a period of history. Because for many readers, it wasn't just fiction. It became a reference point, a way of visualizing the past even if it wasn't entirely accurate. And what makes this moment interesting? Because once a story reaches that level, it doesn't just exist on the page. It starts influencing perception. What people think something looked like, felt like, even meant. And that kind of influence tends to last longer than the moment it was created. And sometimes, instead of shaping perception, something expands access. On May 3, 1952, the Kentucky Derby was broadcast nationally for the first time. Before that, if you weren't there in person, you didn't really experience it. You might hear about it later, read about it in the next day, but you weren't part of it in real time. That changed with television, because suddenly people across the country could watch the same race at the same moment. And what makes that shift important isn't just the technology, it's the shared experience. Millions of people seeing the same thing unfold at once, hearing the same call, reacting in real time. And that's something that feels normal now. But at the time, it was new. Because once something becomes accessible like that, it stops being local. It becomes collective. And that changes how people connect to it. And sometimes instead of expanding outward, something pushes upward. Today in 1973, the Sears Tower in Chicago officially became the tallest building in the world. It stood at 1,450 feet. At the time, that wasn't just tall, it was difficult for people to even picture, because most buildings weren't anywhere close to that height. What made it possible was a new structural design called bundled tube system. Essentially, multiple vertical sections worked together to support the building. That allowed it to go higher than traditional designs could handle. But what really stands out is how it changed perception. Because once something reaches that level, it stops feeling like just a building. It becomes a benchmark. For years, nothing surpassed it, which meant the idea of how tall something could be stayed anchored to that one structure. And that's something that shows up again and again. Once a limit is broken, it doesn't just change what's possible. It changes what people expect next. And while some things stand out because of scale, others stand out because of how they're built over time. James Brown was born on May 3, 1933. He became one of the most influential figures in music, especially in shaping funk. But what made him stand out wasn't just the songs, it's how he approached rhythm. Instead of focusing on melody, he emphasized the beat, pushing everything toward a tight, repetitive groove. Songs like I Got You, I Feel Good, and Papa's Got a Brand New Bag didn't just become popular. They helped define a sound that other artists built from. And his performances reflected that same precision. Every moment was intentional, every cue controlled. His career lasted for decades, and even as music changed, his style remained recognizable. Because sometimes influence doesn't come from adapting to trends. It comes from defining something so clearly that others follow it. It's interesting how these don't seem connected at first, but kind of are. A story shapes how people see the past. An event becomes something people experience together. and a structure resets what people think is possible. Different forms, different outcomes, but all expanding beyond what they originally were. Anyway, that's a bit of what turned up while I was working through May 3rd. I'll be back tomorrow with a new date to work through. If you'd like to hear more of my work or explore the books and projects I've been a part of, you can find it all at waitthat'srandom.com. I'm C.L. Burns, and I appreciate you stopping by. I'll see you tomorrow.